One trade every NBA team must make this offseason to improve their team. I don't have any trades for the Nuggets because they're the champs, the Kings because they're such a young team that's working, or the Spurs because, well, we have to see how things play out. But I can start with the Phoenix Suns, who should definitely be looking at moving DeAndre Ayton for more depth on the team. As of right now, rumors are going back and forth on if they're actually going to move him or not, but after all of his issues with the team and the fact that Phoenix now has 3 max contract scorers, they need more depth. I mean, that's what cost them the playoffs, so it should be a no-brainer. But since that's not happening, I think they have no other choice than to make this move. And I think a deal to either the Hawks revolving around Clint Capella, the Nets revolving around Nick Claxton and Patty Mills, which I really like, or to the Pacers revolving around Miles Turner and others makes the most sense. As for the Memphis Grizzlies, well, now they're gonna eventually have a starting backcourt of Marcus Smart and Ja Morant to go along with Steven Adams in the starting lineup. So that's 3 guys that can't shoot all that well. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 or 3 guys on the entire roster that are good 3-point shooters at all. So they should try and find a trade to a team like the Mavs revolving around Maxi Kleber and Reggie Bullock to round out their team. For the LA Clippers, they should have focused on trading away Kawhi Leonard, but now they should go for Harden and do whatever they can to not give up Paul George in that deal, and I think they can definitely make that happen. The Golden State Warriors made it very clear in the postseason where their team needs to improve for next year. They needed more help off the bench and a big man that could shoot. They got the bench help covered with that bad trade for Chris Paul, but when giving up Jordan Poole and a first, I would have liked to see them solve both of these problems at the same time, but since that didn't happen, they should go try and sign Mo Bamba or make a Kelly Olynyk trade. The LA Lakers can't do anything in terms of trades, seeing how as of the making of this video, they only have 4 players currently on their roster. But I'd say the priority is to re-sign Hachimura and Reeves, then go for a big name free agent to replace what D'Angelo Russell was supposed to be, and sign some bigger big men. Because down the line, next year Nikola Jokic is still going to be an issue for them that they need to solve. The Minnesota Timberwolves have already said they're not going to trade Towns, which is a mistake, because they should definitely go for Pascal Siakam from the Raptors. Toronto would get a younger center, while Pascal would pair well with Rudy Gobert. Honestly though, it's the Wolves, and no matter what they do, they're probably gonna fail. The Pelicans situation on the other hand is a little tricky, because they definitely need a starting point guard, and they also need to trade Zion Williamson. But honestly, I say Zion's a bust, so it's gonna be hard for me to recommend a trade where he goes to a contender, because I just don't think that's viable. But then it's also tough because if he's sent to a young team, well, the Pelicans don't want young assets in return because they're trying to win now. So if I was the Pelicans, I'd go for a guy like Scoot Henderson in a deal, but if I was at any other team, I'd stay far away. But speaking of young teams, the Oklahoma City Thunder are quickly becoming one of the deepest teams in the league. They now have a great player at almost every position. But with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's ascension, it's time for them to take things to the next level. So they need to trade some of their picks and young players for another superstar. But with that, there's so many possibilities out there. The Dallas Mavericks need improvements at every single position this year, but I'd say their main priority should be to trade these young assets for Pascal Siakam. He'd probably be the perfect second option to Luka. But as I mentioned earlier, I can say that the Utah Jazz need to trade Kelly Olynyk, and I'd look to send him to Golden State, who need him most, and might be willing to give up a good amount. The Trailblazers need to stop playing around and just trade Damian Lillard. They already have a young core of Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, and Keon Johnson. They might as well just start over. They're already on a great start for a rebuild. And if they could move Lillard to a team like the Nets for young players and a lot of draft picks to team him up with good friend Mikal Bridges, it would be perfect. With the Rockets, apparently they want to compete this year, but if they can't sign anyone, I think they should make trades to take on bad contracts from other teams like Ben Simmons, for example. If that Lillard trade did happen to the Nets, Brooklyn would want to move Ben as soon as possible, and this would be the best way to do it. And I think the Pistons are another team that should be looking to do the exact same thing, maybe involving a guy like Gordon Hayward from the Hornets. And speaking of the Hornets, don't have a ton they can do, but trading Terry Rozier should be at the top of their list. 2 point guards on the team just isn't it. If I was them, I'd be looking at trading him and a first to the Raptors for Gary Trent Jr. and Malachi Flynn. It would give them more depth while also helping them age down a little bit. Now as for the Orlando Magic, I think it's time they trade for a star. They have so many young players with so much potential. There's actually 8 players 25 and under that they've drafted in recent years. And obviously just that many young players isn't gonna take your team anywhere. So they need to start getting veterans involved in the mix. As for who, well, the possibilities are endless. After trading away Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis in some controversial deals, the only logical move left for the Washington Wizards is to complete a sign-and trade for Kyle Kuzma. If they really just let him walk away while getting nothing in return, it would be a disappointment. They should send him to the Mavericks though, who are heavily interested. The deal would be Reggie Bullock, Josh Green, and a first for Kuzma. I think he'd fit right in with Luka and their ages match up well. Once again for the Indiana Pacers, the trade they must make revolves around Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. And I think the best logical situation is to the Phoenix Suns for DeAndre Ayton. I see no downsides for either team. With the Chicago Bulls, well, with it coming out that Lonzo still won't be back in 2020, 2023, they need to just start over and trade DeMar DeRozan. I don't like a ton of the scenarios that are out there for him. A deal to the Knicks around RJ Barrett is probably the best option. As for the Toronto Raptors, they should start working on trading away the entire roster and just starting over. But to do that, they first need to start with finally moving OG Anunoby. I think they could get one of the best returns of young assets from a team like the Hawks that could really use him. The trade would look something like this and revolve around DeAndre Hunter, because OG's the exact player they thought DeAndre Hunter was gonna be, but it hasn't panned out, at least yet. So pair him with other assets to get the deal done and give them a perimeter defensive forward. And if not the Hawks, then I'd say the Knicks could give them a good return too. RJ Barrett and their two newly drafted players from this year would get it done, and in exchange it would drastically improve the Knicks team. For the Miami Heat, they've been in a difficult situation with finding trades given the makeup of their team. And when a team that just made the NBA Finals is making deals, it has to be the perfect one so they don't completely mess up what they had. So I'd say the popular choice of trading for Damian Lillard is their best option. Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, and Max Strus all came up huge for them, but they need another star so those guys can step back into being excellent role players. And they could offer a deal of Tyler Hero, Nikola Jovic, and multiple first-round picks to make it happen. Plus, this move obviously wouldn't hurt the team since neither of these guys even played in the finals anyways. While the Atlanta Hawks, well, they should have one thing on their mind, and that's to make a trade for a guy like DeAndre Ayton. It doesn't seem likely at this point, and rumors are going back and forth on if the Suns are even trying to trade DeAndre, but if they are, Atlanta has more than enough pieces to complete a deal. I'd suggest something like Clint Capella, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and a first-round pick for him. Like I said, the Hawks have depth to spare, and that's exactly what Phoenix needs. They'd get Capella, who's a pretty similar styled player, along with a scorer like Bogdan off the bench. On the other hand, the Brooklyn Nets are a tricky one, and things are a little more complicated for them. But if I was them, I would start with trading all the excess talent from this team, and there's a lot of it. Guys like Seth Curry, Joe Harris, Patty Mills, Royce O'Neal, and Ben Simmons. Most of those guys could help this team and did help them make the playoffs last year, but they instead need to continue building team chemistry amongst the younger guys, while at the same time preparing the roster to bring in another superstar to pair with McHale, either through a trade or a free agent signing. And then from there, the sky's the limit. But now there's nothing tricky about the New York Knicks situation, because it's very clear what they need to do. They have an excellent roster with Jalen Brunson leading the charge, but both Julius Randle and RJ Barrett do more harm than good for this team. It's really hard for me to find one for Randle specifically because I can't see any team wanting him right now based on his playoff performance. While as for RJ, I do actually like the idea of this one involving him for Buddy Hield to the Pacers, because it solves problems for both teams, but then again, the Pacers already have so many young guards fighting for minutes. Now on the other hand, the Cleveland Cavaliers need to do something about their front court, because we recently saw their team collapse in the first round thanks to their two big men not meshing well together at all. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley couldn't coexist on the court. Both guys stood around, couldn't create their own offense, and didn't fit in together. But I actually love the idea of the Mavs signing and trading Christian Wood and exchanging him for Allen. It's just what Dallas needs, while Wood's ability to stretch the floor could really complement Evan Mobley nicely. Okay, originally I was gonna say Philly needed to desperately move Tobias Harris, and they should still be trying, but now they first need to figure out this James Harden situation. I doubt they can get a star in return, but I'd at least try to get a guy like Tyler Hero back from the Miami Heat. For the Boston Celtics, well, they already made their move and did the trade they needed to make, so I won't have anything for them. But then as for the Milwaukee Bucks, well, things clearly weren't clicking for them to close out the year. So I'd say they should really just look at making smaller moves to exchange some of their role players with others. I just don't know exactly who. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out.